of a single Max 7 Rono freighter.
Fly a Rono?
The box freighter? Escaping. In a Rono, you'll be lucky to make the horizon.
Get this thing in the air! Go! 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 Hang on!
Obviously, it's a track launch, so there's an adjusted thrust ratio to make it up the ramp. It's on an overhead rail.
Has to be.
So calibrating the weight.
How would I know the weight? You don't know how to get it off the runway, do you?
We know how to fly it.
Yeah, but you gotta get it up there first.
Answer the question.
You really don't. You don't know how to get it out of there.
How do you input the weight?
There's a load clutch. It's a big ugly handle, just right next to the booster throttle. I'll pilot. I'm flying it. We can say it's your idea. I don't care, but if it's my ass on the line, I'm pulling this thing out of there.
Hello, and welcome to Building Aldahni Part 6, or Update 6, the Rono Trawler. Today we're going to be looking at the Rono Trawler. I've made two models, one meant to have interior details and stay in the hangar, which will be the first one we take a look at, and then one with exterior details meant to be flying through the eye. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and we'll actually start with the interior details, and then we'll go ahead and we'll move over to looking at the exterior, or the full ship. So you can see in there, I've got a minifigure for scale, and so they do scale pretty well with minifigures, though the cockpit not quite, and we'll show that off with the exterior model. But then you can see in the back there, we've got our rolls of credit, and we've got 3 stacks of those. Those are quite well secured, because I think we all know what happens when they're not. But yeah, it came together well. There are some gaps in like the top doors there, where, because you can see that those top panels, they just sort of clip in, so that does let some light in there. However, I think if I can, I'm gonna try to put a actual light inside of there. But let's go ahead and I'm gonna change out the lens, and I'll give you a look at what the full ship looks like. So, looking at the Rono Trawler in its entirety, this is sort of what the model will look like. And as you can see, I've started to build the runway there. It may actually look familiar if you've seen some of my other videos, because right now that is lifted straight from last year's Naboo mock. I think it's a really good runway design. I know in the show there's technically no like runway lights, but it looks really good. I really like using those glow-in-the-dark tiles, and so I think I'm just going to go ahead and use it, because it does have in the show, they've got like a little pit, sort of, that the trawler hangs above, and so it does accomplish that with a little extra touch of my own. But moving back to the trawler, so you can see that the cockpit, I tried to do the best job I could of getting that angle. It is a really steep angle in the show, and so that windscreen works out really well. really wish we had like a sticker or a print of the sort of like triangle angles, because I wasn't able to do that for these ships. But you know, you work with what you have. Um, I was able to put the Imperial logos uh, on the sides, um, and so that looks really good. I should mention, I guess, that unexpectedly, so uh, right around the time that I launched my series, I found through YouTube recommended, actually, there's a YouTuber called Hypolite Bricks, I believe is how you pronounce it. I'm not entirely sure. Um, but I'm pretty sure it's Hypolite Bricks. I'll link him down in the description. But right around the time that I started this series, he started a much more well edited, in depth series where he's building, I believe, 12 different Andor mocks, and unexpectedly, um, he built the interior, or a section of the interior of the base, and he also built a Rono Trawler at the same time that I was building one. And um, I've seen there are like a couple between me, him, and I think there's another one on YouTube that was more of like a playset idea for what a Rono Trawler would look like. Um, but there isn't a whole lot of them out there, which again is one of the reasons why I picked Andor to make a mock of, because I really think that Andor deserves all the love that we can get it, and so that's why I wanted to make an Andor mock, because there are so few Andor mocks. But if you haven't seen Hypolite's series, I would highly recommend it. Um, I believe it comes out weekly or bi-weekly. I think it's a little irregular, um, but really good stuff. However, he used mainly dark gray for his Rono Trawler, which in some shots I think is more accurate. In other shots, I think it's light bluish gray, um, which is the main color that I've chosen to go with. I think it's one of those things where, uh, like, I can understand perfectly why Lego made the Bad Batch shuttle in sand blue, because from some shots it looks dark gray, from some shots it looks sand blue. Um, so it's kind of hard to tell. Um, but I do, I'm really happy with how this turned out. Because I think Hypolite used a lot of more brick building, um, whereas most of it for me is made up of clips. Um, there are a few brick supports in the inside, on either side, but mostly to accomplish the kind of weird angles, because they call it a box freighter, but it is not really a box. Like, I suppose a box can be any shape, but when you think of a box, most of the time you think of like a rectangle or a square, not a hexagon that's weirdly shaped. But I think I managed to pull it off pretty well. Um, so the doors here, um, they're tiled on the top, and they're not tiled on the other side. That is our exterior model, that will be tiled on the outside. Um, Essentially, I flipped the doors around between the two models so that the more smooth side is side up, the side that you're going to see. And I left these studs exposed. That way I want to place at least a cart on one of them. Probably with the Commandant on it, like having his heart attack. But I also probably want to place a couple figures just outside, because as you can see, that figure right there, it's pretty hard to see, and so I kind of want to have them more outside of the ship, and I'll probably put a few more credit trays on the inside so that it'll be easier to see from the outside. But let's go ahead and before we talk about the exterior model, we're actually going to go and we'll talk about what I've done for the interior of the base so far. Really was trying to get the Rono models done for this update, but in doing that, I kind of had to work out some like spacing, particularly for the tunnel here, where I needed to make sure that the Rono Trawler could actually fit through the tunnel. And so you can see I've kind of come up with this design that I think should work, because it'll give me the angle that I need, and I can cover most of it up, so you won't see it largely. I also was able to put in, I've got more red lights, and so I'll be able to put those in the corners, and that'll be really great because that should give like a red glow from the valley side to the tunnel, which I think would look really cool. But yeah, there's not too much to go over. I am going to have to put the vault out here. I know in the show they say that it is technically behind the trawler, but there's really no room behind the trawler. And just in a way that I want people, because I do want people to be able to see everything. And so with the size of the Rono Trawler, it's gonna be really hard to incorporate like the vault on like behind it. Like even if we pushed it all the way up, but then like that would look really awkward if it was pushed all the way up to the tunnel. I also started work on like the overhead rail. I think this is kind of the design that I'm going to go with. However, I'm not sure how to connect it quite yet, because it is perfectly spaced for a couple of those 1x4 bricks with the groove in them. So it is spaced so that I can place those with two studs in between them, and they should hold on to the rail. However, I'm not quite sure how I want it to attach to the ship, because I do want to have the ship slightly elevated over that pit and like hanging, but I'm not entirely sure on how to accomplish that, but that will be for another update. So yeah, let's go ahead and we'll take a look at our exterior model. So on this exterior model, wanted to touch back on what I said earlier when I said that these are scaled for minifigures, but not quite the cockpit. The cockpit on this one, you can see it's a little hard to see, but I just placed a random Imperial figure on the inside there. And you can see that he doesn't have any legs. That's because the angle for the cockpit, in order to get it right, it's kind of a sharp angle. And we do have a windscreen that is able to match that angle. However, the underside, I couldn't really think of anything other than basic brick slopes, or inverted slopes. And so that doesn't really leave a whole lot of space for the figure. However, considering that this exterior model is going to be the only one that you'll be able to see someone in the cockpit, which will be Cassian or Clem. It won't matter too much. It'll look just the same from the exterior, but from the interior, you'll be able to tell that I kind of cheated on the space there. So you can see here our exterior model looks largely the same as the interior model, but again, like I mentioned before, the doors are inverted. I did add some trans orange tiles on the bottom instead of the grill, just to give it more of a sense of like having lights. And then on the front, you can see I've got some, I forget what they're called. They're dots. They're satin trans clear. They're like gem pieces. But I put one of those on either side of the cockpit, just to sort of give it the impression that it's got full like headlights on it. You can kind of see through the cockpit window some of the controls there. I am thinking about modifying those so that I can put a big ugly handle in there, just because I think that would be a fun detail for hyper and or nerds like me to notice. But for now, it's all just different control panels. And then you can't really see from this angle, or well, no, you can. You can see the figure there on the inside, the half figure, which again, I mean, it's only visible from so many angles, and considering this will be closed off entirely, I'm really not too worried about the fact that I'm cheating there with a half figure. I think that works fine. But let's go ahead and we'll just sort of spin it around. So as you can see, other side just the same, but of course it's the other side. It's a pretty symmetrical ship. And then the back here, I've used some small panels as like greebling, as well as some vents, and then added in some more trans orange to represent lights. And then on the back of each engine, I've included a trans or a satin trans light blue, man, that's a long color, tile on each of them to represent the thrust. Essentially, the only difference between the back of this model and the back of our interior model is that the interior model, it has, I believe they're pearl light gray, or flat silver. The more I look into that, the more confused I get as to what color is which. But essentially, that's the only real difference, is that here the thrusters are off, here the thrusters are on. I may try and change the design, because right now the thrusters are just 1x1 rounded brick, which it's essentially what it is in the show, because I thought about making it bigger, but the problem is that it starts to look really big on like the scale of the ship, and so I think for now that's gonna work. But I may try and add on. I thought about doing like two light bluish gray studs and then a pearl dark gray stud, and then have the thrust come out, just to sort of show that like some carbon scoring. But who knows? I may do that. I might not. Who knows? But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this update. Pretty sure this is another shorter one. Next week's might be a bit longer, or next week. Next update. I don't want to. There's a reason they're not called weeks. So far they've been bi-weekly, and that's been great. But I'm thinking the next one, either I'm going to go over minifigures, as now that I'm designing sort of the areas that don't have pre-established minifigures. I'm having to build a lot of custom figures, and so I kind of want to show off some of those. But I may also, because just adding that runway in made me really want to figure out what I was going to do as far as building the base goes. I know right now I've got that dark turquoise sort of wall built up right there, and that's because that's pretty much as far back as I want the base to go. Because I think I'm going to make it a bit taller than like where the river sits, but from standing level for the river, you can pretty much only see back to like those frogs there, or like the tree. Like from standing level, you can't really see that far back under the river. There's a reason why Vel and Cinta are out here in front. And so I don't want that to be a problem with the base. So the base will be taller than where the river sits. However, it's also going to be shorter. It won't go all the way back. And just that way, more of it can be visible, and also I can save space, which will be really good, because that allows me to have space back there. It makes the mock lighter, but also gives me more options as far as lighting goes. So I may be able to implement more lights, which would be great, especially into the eye, which I suppose is another thing that I should touch on before we go, is just that this exterior model, it is hollow on the inside, so you can see the doors, they just open like that. They've got one one brick there, or not brick, hinge, I think, panel. Not sure what that's called actually, but it's got one of those on each of them that hold the doors at that solid angle. But the interior, you can see as I open it up, it is empty. There is absolutely nothing in it. And that's because, essentially, well, I want this one to be up in the air, suspended. Well, not suspended, just sort of held up in the air, like the TIE fighters. However, I want it to be at an angle, but I do want to put a battery pack for lights that I will have in the eye, inside of it, and so it's got a full hollow interior that we will be able to fill. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think about my Rono Trawler design. I think it looks pretty good, but I know that your guys' feedback on like the TIE Fighter design was really helpful, because I may not have tried to smooth out the sides to make it look less odd if it weren't for you guys, and so any feedback that I could get would be great. But I hope you enjoyed the video and enjoyed your day, and bye bye.